My name is Claire Benton, and I turned 18 at midnight.
At 7:10 the next evening, my father raised a glass at my graduation dinner and told 23 relatives that I was finally mature enough to do what was right for the family.
Then he placed a silver pen beside my plate. My mother smiled too brightly. My older sister Natalie stopped eating and watched me like she already knew how the scene was supposed to end. And my Uncle Russell slid 3 papers across the table.
A consent to sell,
A release of beneficiary rights, and a family advancement agreement that would give me $25,000 in exchange for signing away my grandmother's house, her savings account, and the one place in the world where I had ever felt chosen. My father leaned close and whispered, "Just sign it. Claire, don't embarrass us." I looked at the papers. Then I looked at the developer sitting 2 seats away in a navy suit, already holding a folder with the name of my grandmother's house printed on the front.
Magnolia House redevelopment proposal.
They had not invited me to dinner to celebrate graduation. They had invited me to surrender.
What they did not know was that at 12:03 that morning, while everyone else in the house was asleep, I had already signed a different set of papers on a video call with my grandmother's attorney, a certificate of trust,
A beneficiary acceptance form, and a preservation clause my grandmother wrote 8 years before she died.
By the time my father handed me that pen, the deed had already been recorded. The house was legally locked, and the sale my uncle promised to a developer was impossible.
So I picked up the pen.
I smiled.
And I said, "Before I sign anything, Dad, you should check who owns Magnolia House." Let me take you back to the summer I was 10 years old, because that was when my grandmother first taught me the difference between a house that costs money and a house that holds a life. Her name was Evelyn Hart, but everyone in Charleston called her Miss Evelyn. She was my mother's mother, though you would never know it from the way my mother spoke about her. To my mother, Grandma Evelyn was stubborn, sentimental, dramatic, impossible with money, and far too attached to old things. To me, she was the only adult who asked a question and waited for the answer. Magnolia House sat on a quiet street 3 blocks from the water, painted pale blue with white trim and a wrap-around porch that leaned just enough to make contractors frown. The front steps creaked. The kitchen window stuck in July. The upstairs hallway smelled like lavender soap, old paper, and sea air. My grandmother said houses had voices if you stopped talking long enough to listen.
Every summer, my parents sent me to her for 2 weeks while they took Natalie to dance intensives, leadership camps, and later, college tours that somehow never included me.
Natalie was the golden one. 3 years older, perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect way of making adults feel like they had discovered her. She won pageants, student council elections, scholarship interviews, and every argument at our dinner table. I was the practical one. That was what my mother called me when she wanted me to stop needing things. "Claire is practical," she would say. "She doesn't mind." I did mind. I minded when Natalie got the bigger bedroom because she needed space for trophies. I minded when Dad missed my science fair because Natalie had a dress fitting. I minded when Mom said, "You know your sister is sensitive," as if that explained why the entire family had to move around her feelings like furniture. But I learned early that if I complained, I became difficult. So I became useful instead. I packed lunches. I cleaned up after dinner. I balanced Dad's receipts for the marina supply business when I was 14 because his bookkeeping was a disaster and numbers made more sense to me than people did. At Magnolia House, I was not useful. I was wanted. Grandma Evelyn let me choose the color of the porch cushions. She taught me how to oil the old banister, how to test a loose floorboard, how to read property tax notices and not be afraid of official envelopes. She kept a black ledger in the kitchen drawer. Every repair went in that ledger, every bill, every donation from the 2 retired teachers who rented the upstairs rooms during the winter, every dollar she spent on roof shingles, paint, termites, plumbing, or the enormous magnolia tree in the front yard that she refused to cut down, even when everyone told her the roots were too close to the foundation. One afternoon, when I was 12, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with the ledger open and a stack of papers beside her. She closed the folder when I came in. Not fast, just enough for me to notice. "Grandma, are you selling the house?" Her eyes softened, but she did not lie. "People keep asking, 'Are you?' "No." "Why not? Mom says it would make you rich." Grandma laughed quietly. "Your mother thinks rich means having more money than memory." I sat across from her. She turned the ledger toward me and tapped the page. "This house is not valuable because someone wants to buy it. Claire, it is valuable because people were loved here. Your grandfather proposed to me on that porch. Your mother learned to walk in that hallway. I fed neighbors in this kitchen after Hurricane Hugo. A house like this is not just lumber, it is witness." I did not fully understand. I was 12, but I remembered the word witness. That summer, she took me to the county records office. I thought we were going for ice cream afterward, which we were, but first she showed me how deeds were recorded. The clerk knew her by name. Grandma showed me a book of property transfers and whispered, "Never let anyone make you afraid of paper. Paper is where people put promises when they know memory will be challenged." That sentence stayed in me. At home, promises were spoken loudly and forgotten quietly. At Magnolia House, promises were written down. 2 years later, my grandfather died. I was 14. The funeral was held under gray skies with white flowers and folding chairs that sank into wet grass. At the reception, I saw my father, my mother, and Uncle Russell standing in the dining room at Magnolia House. Uncle Russell was a real estate broker who wore expensive watches and called everyone partner when he wanted something. He had a tablet in his hand. My mother said, "She can't keep this place forever." Uncle Russell answered, "She won't have to. There are developers watching this street. Give it a few years." Then my father said, "Evelyn is too emotional. Once she's gone, we can make a rational decision." Once she's gone? I was 14, standing in the hallway with a paper plate of funeral cake in my hands, hearing adults calculate the future of a woman still sitting in the next room, holding my grandfather's handkerchief. I said nothing. Children hear more than adults think. And sometimes silence is the only place to store what you cannot use yet. After my grandfather died, I visited Magnolia House every Saturday. At first, my mother said it was sweet, then useful, then excessive. Grandma's knees got worse. The porch needed work. The upstairs plumbing rattled. The tenants needed someone to carry boxes up the back stairs. I drove over in the used Corolla I bought with babysitting money and did whatever needed doing. Natalie never came. She said old houses made her allergies act up But whenever Grandma's name came up at dinner, Natalie had opinions.
"She should just sell," Natalie said one night when I was 16. "That whole neighborhood is changing. She could get a fortune."
My mother nodded. Exactly. Holding on to that place is selfish.
I looked up from my plate. Selfish to who?
The table went quiet. Dad set down his fork. Don't start. I'm just asking. You're not asking, Mom said. You're judging. Natalie sighed. Claire, not everything has to be an emotional courtroom. I almost laughed. I had spent my entire life in a family where Natalie could cry over a chipped nail and everyone would rearrange dinner. But I was emotional for caring about the woman who actually showed up for me.
I did not argue.
I cleared the plates. That was my role. The practical one, the quiet one, the one who made the room easier for everyone else. Grandma Evelyn saw it.
One Saturday, while I was painting the porch railing, she sat in a wicker chair with a glass of iced tea and watched me for almost an hour.
Finally, she said, you know you don't have to earn your place with me. The brush stopped in my hand. I know. No, sweetheart, I don't think you do. I kept my eyes on the railing because if I looked at her, I would cry.
She continued, people who only love you when you are useful are not loving you. They are renting you.
I whispered, what if they're family? Then the rent is more expensive. That was my grandmother. Soft voice, sharp truth. 3 months before she died, she gave me a small brass key.
I was 17.
We were in the kitchen at Magnolia House. Rain tapped against the windows. The ledger was open between us. This opens the bottom drawer in my bedroom desk, she said. Why are you giving it to me? Because one day you may need the contents before anyone thinks you should have them. My throat tightened. Grandma! She squeezed my hand. Listen to me. Your mother sees this house as rescue money. Russell sees commission. Your father sees a way out of his debts. Natalie sees fairness only when fairness means she gets half of what someone else kept alive.
I wanted to defend them.
A child's heart is stubborn that way. Even when the evidence is stacked in front of you, part of you still wants to believe your parents will choose you when it matters. But Grandma kept talking. I have done what I can legally do, but law needs timing. You will have to be brave at the right moment. What moment? When they ask you to sign. I stared at her. She smiled sadly. They will. People who feel entitled to what is yours almost always bring a pen. Grandma Evelyn died in early April, just 6 weeks before my high school graduation. My mother cried beautifully at the funeral. I do not mean she faked every tear. Grief is complicated. My mother loved her mother in the way people love someone they also want to control. But she also knew how to perform sadness so well that people brought casseroles for 2 weeks and told her she had been an extraordinary daughter. After the graveside service, I went to Magnolia House alone. The rooms felt too still. I used the brass key on the bottom drawer of Grandma's bedroom desk. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in her handwriting. Claire. No last name.
Just Claire. Inside was a letter, a business card, and a 1-page instruction sheet.
The business card read, Marjorie Bell, attorney at law, Heart Preservation Trust. The letter was short. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, I am gone, and they are closer to the house than they should be. Do not panic.
Do not argue in the kitchen. Do not let them rush you.
Call Marjorie before your 18th birthday. The house is protected, but protection still needs someone willing to stand in it. Remember what I told you. People who rush you are hoping you won't read. I love you more than the house. That is why I left you both. Grandma Evelyn. I read the letter 3 times sitting on her bedroom floor. Then I called the number. Marjorie Bell answered like she had been waiting with the phone in her hand. Claire, she said, I'm very sorry about your grandmother. We need to meet before your birthday. My 18th birthday was the same week as graduation. 5 days away. That was when the clock started. Marjorie's office was downtown in an old brick building with high ceilings and shelves so full they looked load-bearing. She was in her early 60s, with silver hair cut blunt at her jaw and the calm expression of a woman who had watched greedy relatives underestimate paperwork for 30 years.
She opened a folder and placed documents in front of me.
Your grandmother established the Magnolia House Preservation Trust 8 years ago, she said. The house, the savings account used for maintenance, and an investment portfolio were transferred into the trust while she was alive. Current estimated value, including the property and investments, is approximately $2.8 million. I stopped breathing correctly.
2.8 million?
Yes, the house is worth a great deal now because of development pressure in that neighborhood. My family thinks it goes through the estate. I know. The way she said it made me look up. Marjorie removed her glasses. Your grandmother was very specific. Your mother and uncle are not trustees. Your father has no authority. Natalie has no ownership interest. You become the sole beneficiary when you turn 18, and you may accept the role of preservation trustee at that time. I stared at the papers. Why me? Your grandmother said you were the only one who checked the roof before asking the price. My eyes burned. Marjorie continued. There is also a no-sale clause. Magnolia House cannot be sold for 20 years unless 3 conditions are met: structural failure, court approval, and your written consent as trustee. Even then, proceeds must remain in the trust for preservation work or housing support, not personal distribution. So they can't sell it? No. What if they try? They already are. She slid another page across the desk. It was a printed email from Uncle Russell to someone at a company called Harborline Development. Projected close date, pending beneficiary signature. Sale estimate, $2.4 million.
My stomach turned.
He doesn't own it, I said. No, but he has represented that your family controls it. Your father appears to have signed a preliminary letter of intent.
Can they do that?
They can sign anything. That does not make it valid. I thought about my father smiling at dinner, my mother saying graduation should be a fresh start, Natalie suddenly texting me outfit ideas after months of ignoring me. A fresh start. No. A trap with candles. What do I do? Marjorie tapped the form in front of me.
At midnight on your birthday, you sign acceptance. At 8 the next morning, I record the certificate of trust and preservation notice with the county. After that, anyone who searches the title sees the trust, the no sale clause, and your authority. If they attempt to record anything else, it will be rejected or flagged. And if I tell them before then? They may create a cloud on title. They may pressure you.
They may try to get a signature before you understand what it means. I almost laughed. They're already planning a graduation dinner. Marjorie nodded once, as if a puzzle piece had clicked exactly where she expected. Then eat carefully. The next 4 days were the longest of my life. At home, everyone became nice. That was how I knew things were worse than I thought. My mother bought my favorite cereal for the first time in years. Dad asked about my final exams. Natalie came into my room and sat on my bed without permission, talking about how proud Grandma would be of me. Graduating is huge, she said. Turning 18 is huge. It's like you're finally part of adult decisions now. Adult decisions. Not family. Not celebration. Decisions.
I folded a sweater and said, "What decisions?"
She looked too casual. I don't know. Just life, college, money, property, whatever.
I smiled. "Sounds exciting."
Natalie smiled back. We were both lying. The night before my birthday, I drove to Magnolia House. The sky was heavy with rain, and the magnolia blossoms in the front yard looked bruised in the dark. I unlocked the door and stood in the entryway listening. Old houses do make sounds.
Wood settling, pipes ticking, wind pressing under doors.
But that night, the house felt like it was holding its breath with me.
I went into the kitchen, opened Grandma's ledger, and ran my fingers over her handwriting. Roof repair, porch paint, tenant refund, storm shutters, Claire's birthday cake, because she likes lemon.
That one broke me. Not loudly.
I cried the way people cry when they are trying not to disturb the dead.
At 11:52, I opened my laptop. Marjorie joined the video call from her office, wearing a navy blazer and reading glasses.
"Are you ready?"
"No."
"That is all right," she said. "Ready is not required, only clear."
At midnight, I turned 18.
At 12:03, I signed the acceptance of trusteeship.
1 page.
Then another.
Then the acknowledgement of preservation terms. My signature looked smaller than I expected. Marjorie reviewed everything, nodded, and said, "Your grandmother planned well. Now we do the public part."
I closed the laptop and sat in Grandma's kitchen until almost 2 in the morning.
When I got home, my parents were asleep. On the dining room table was a folder I had not seen before. I did not open it. I did not need to. At 8 a.m., Marjorie filed the trust certificate. At 8:17, she texted me 2 words. Recorded, protected. At 8:31, Uncle Russell called my father. I was in the hallway. Dad answered in the kitchen. "What do you mean recorded?"
A pause.
"What trust?" Another pause.
Then Dad's voice dropped.
"Russell, you told me you checked the title." I stood very still. My mother came out of the bedroom tying her robe. "What's wrong?" Dad covered the phone and looked at her. For the first time in my life, I saw my father look truly afraid. He whispered, "Evelyn, put the house in a trust." My mother's face changed.
Not grief.
Not surprise. Calculation. Then she turned and looked directly down the hall at me. I walked into the kitchen. "Good morning," I said. No one answered. Dad ended the call slowly. "Claire," he said, "did you know about this?" "Yes." My mother put one hand on the counter. "For how long?" "Since Grandma told me to call her attorney." Dad's face darkened. "You went behind our backs?" I looked at the folder on the table.
You mean before or after you planned a dinner so I could sign away a house you don't own?
Silence. My mother's voice went soft.
Dangerously soft.
We were going to explain everything tonight. I'm sure this family is in trouble. Claire. I know.
Then why would you do this to us? There it was. By this, she meant refusing to be robbed.
By us, she meant the people who had already decided I was the obstacle. I said, I didn't do anything to you. Grandma did this before she died because she knew you would try to sell the house. Dad slammed his hand on the table.
Do not talk about your grandmother like she was against us. She wasn't against you. She was protecting me.
My mother's eyes filled. From your own family? I did not answer, because the answer was standing in the room.
The graduation dinner was at 7 o'clock that night.
I could have canceled. I almost did. But Marjorie advised me to go. If they believe you are afraid, she said, they will push harder. Let them show their hand. Do not sign. Do not shout. Keep your phone on. So I went. The restaurant was called the Gilded Oak, which sounded like a place where families paid too much money to pretend they were closer than they were. My mother had reserved a private room. There were white roses on the table, gold-rimmed plates, and a printed menu with my name at the top. Congratulations, Claire.
Under any other circumstances, I might have been touched.
But then I saw Uncle Russell near the bar with a man in a navy suit. Harbor Line Development. I knew before anyone introduced him. He had developer posture, relaxed, expensive, already imagining walls gone and profit rising from dust. Natalie rushed over first. Claire, you look so pretty.
She hugged me too hard.
Over her shoulder, I saw the folder on the side table. The same one from our dining room. Dad kissed my cheek. Mom adjusted my necklace without asking. Uncle Russell shook my hand and said, Big day, kiddo. Then the developer smiled. Claire, I've heard a lot about you. I haven't heard much about you, I said.
His smile thinned. Dinner began.
For 40 minutes, people performed celebration. A cousin asked where I would go to college. My mother said, We're still deciding what makes sense financially. Dad talked about how families had to adapt after loss. Uncle Russell told a story about Grandpa that was not true. Natalie asked the server for extra candles because the room looked better on camera. I ate slowly. I let them talk. Sometimes power looks like patience.
Then dessert arrived.
Lemon cake.
My favorite.
Grandma's favorite, too. My father stood with a glass in his hand. I want to say something about Claire, he began. The room turned toward him. I placed my napkin in my lap. Claire has always been practical, he said. Quiet, responsible, sometimes maybe too independent. A few relatives chuckled.
But tonight, she becomes an adult. And adulthood means understanding that family comes before individual wants.
There it was. The door opening, he continued. Magnolia House has been a blessing, but also a burden. Evelyn loved that place, but love does not pay taxes, repairs, insurance, debt, college. We have to think about the living now. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Uncle Russell nodded gravely, as if he had not already tried to sell the blessing. Dad looked at me. Claire understands that tonight she is going to help us move forward.
The developer reached for his folder.
My father placed the silver pen beside my plate.
Uncle Russell slid the papers toward me.
"Just a formality," he said. The room waited. My phone buzzed once in my lap. A message from Marjorie. "If needed, I am on standby." I looked at the first page. Consent to sell Magnolia House.
Second page.
Release of beneficiary claim. Third page. Family advancement agreement. $25,000, payable after closing.
A gift, it said.
I almost smiled. They were buying a $2.8 million trust with a $25,000 gift and a lemon cake.
I picked up the pen.
My mother exhaled. Natalie's shoulders relaxed. Dad's eyes softened with victory. Then I set the pen down across the paper. "Before I sign," I said, "can someone explain why a developer is here at my graduation dinner?" The room went quiet. The man in the navy suit shifted. Uncle Russell laughed. "Claire, this is not the time for theatrics."
"I agree, so let's be direct."
My father's jaw tightened. "Claire." I turned to him. "Did you sign a letter of intent with Harborline Development for a house you don't own?" A cousin whispered, "What?" Dad looked at Russell.
Russell looked at the developer.
The developer looked at me. That was the first crack. My mother leaned forward. "Sweetheart, you're confused." "No, Mom, I'm 18. I reached into my bag and removed a blue folder. Not red. That would have been too dramatic for Grandma Evelyn. Blue, like the house? I placed it on the table. "This is the certificate of trust recorded this morning with the county. Magnolia House belongs to the Heart Preservation Trust. I am the sole beneficiary and acting preservation trustee."
Natalie said, "What does that mean?"
"It means no one at this table can sell it."
Uncle Russell's face turned red. "That is not accurate."
I opened the folder and removed the first document. "It was transferred into trust 8 years ago, recorded legally, before Grandma got sick, before Grandpa died, before anyone could claim she was confused."
The developer reached for his phone.
Dad said, "Russell?" Russell stood. "There are ways to challenge these things."
"There is a no-sale clause." I said, 20 years, structural failure, court approval, and trustee consent, all required.
The developer was already typing. My mother's tears disappeared. That was how I knew they had been for display. "You little snake," she whispered. The table froze.
I was 18 years old in a restaurant full of adults who had rehearsed my surrender.
So I did what Grandma taught me. I read from the paper.
Section 4, Preservation Restriction. Magnolia House shall not be sold, transferred, encumbered, demolished, or redeveloped for 20 years following the death of Evelyn Hart unless all legal conditions are met.
I placed the page down. None have been met.
Uncle Russell pointed at me. "You don't understand what you're doing."
"I understand exactly what I'm doing." "You're destroying your family." "No," I said. "I'm refusing to let you sell the witness." No one understood that line except me. And maybe Grandma, wherever promises go when the people who made them are gone.
The developer stood up.
His name, I later learned, was Martin Klein. He adjusted his jacket and looked at Uncle Russell with the cold politeness of a man whose money had just become a problem. "You represented that your family had authority to sell." Russell forced a laugh. "This is a misunderstanding." Martin held up his phone. "My legal team just pulled the county filing The trust is recorded. The preservation notice is active. Your letter of intent is worthless. Dad went pale. What letter of intent? My mother asked. That was interesting. She knew about the sale, but maybe she did not know Russell had already signed terms with penalties. Martin looked at my father. You signed as family representative. Dad said nothing. The room shifted again. Not toward me. Away from him.
Martin placed his napkin on the table. We will be in contact.
Then he left.
Uncle Russell followed him into the hallway, whispering fast.
Dad sat down slowly. My mother stared at him. Thomas, she said. Her voice had the tone I remembered from childhood, the tone that meant someone had failed her publicly. Thomas Benton looked suddenly older than 47. He looked at me. Claire, we can fix this. You keep saying we. I'm your father. Yes. That house could save us. No, Dad. You wanted it to rescue you from choices you made. He flinched. My mother stood. Do not speak to your father that way. How should I speak to him? Like a child, like the practical one, like someone who should be grateful for $25,000 from her own inheritance? Natalie whispered, It wasn't your inheritance until Grandma made it yours. I looked at her.
She did make it mine.
Natalie's face twisted. You always did this. You acted quiet, but you were always working Grandma. That hurt. Not because it was true, but because I could hear my mother inside her voice. I was cleaning gutters. Natalie, you were allergic to old houses. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. My father leaned forward. The marina business is underwater. I know. You knew? I've been doing your receipts since I was 14. He looked ashamed for half a second. Then desperate. I owe $180,000 on loans. Your mother's credit cards are maxed. Natalie's graduate school deposit is due. We thought if we sold the house, we could make everyone whole. Everyone? He did not answer. Because the agreement gives me $25,000 out of a $2.4 million offer. Mom said, You are 18. You don't need that kind of money. And you do? Her face hardened. The room was so quiet I could hear the ice melting in a glass.
I pulled out the final page.
Grandma Evelyn's letter.
I did not read the whole thing.
Only one line. I love you more than the house. That is why I left you both. My father looked away.
My mother said, She turned you against us.
No, she warned me you would say that. That was when Uncle Russell returned. His face was gray. He looked at Dad first. We have a problem. I almost laughed. A problem, not a lie. Not attempted fraud. A problem. Martin Klein's company was threatening legal action for misrepresentation. Russell had accepted a $75,000 earnest payment personally. Calling it a refundable development deposit, he had used part of it to cover office expenses. My mother gripped the back of her chair. You took their money? Russell said. It was temporary. That phrase must run in families like ours.
Temporary.
I was going to pay it back. We were going to explain.
Just sign this. Do not embarrass us. I stood up. Dad said, Where are you going?
Home. This is your dinner. No, this was a closing meeting with cake.
I picked up the blue folder.
My mother's voice sharpened. If you walk out now, do not expect things to go back to normal.
I turned to her.
Normal is what I'm walking away from. I slept at Magnolia House that night. Not well, but safely. The next morning, Marjorie came by with coffee and a stack of copies. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and walked me through what would happen next. Harbor Line Development would pursue Russell for misrepresentation. My father might be named because he signed the letter of intent without authority. The trust was secure.
The no-sale clause was secure. The house was safe.
You were very calm last night, Marjorie said. I didn't feel calm. That is often when calm matters. By noon, my phone had 42 messages. Mom, you humiliated us. Dad, please call me. We need to talk as a family. Natalie, you ruined everything.
Uncle Russell, call me before this gets worse. Cousin Elise, is it true Grandma left you the house?
Natalie again. You're selfish. I hope you enjoy being alone. I did not reply to most of them. I did answer Lily. Lily was Uncle Russell's 14-year-old daughter. She texted me at 3:12 p.m.
Did my dad do something bad? I stared at the screen for a long time.
Then I wrote back. Adults made choices. You did not.
She replied with a single heart.
That broke me more than my mother's insults. Because children always stand closest to the blast of adult greed, and everyone pretends they are too young to feel the heat. Over the next month, everything came out in pieces. Harbor Line filed a civil complaint against Russell for the deposit and damages.
The State Real Estate Commission opened an investigation.
My father hired an attorney he could not afford. My mother told people I had been manipulated by a lawyer. Natalie posted a quote on Instagram about watching money change people. I saved it. Not because I planned revenge. Because documentation had become my way of not disappearing. 2 weeks after the dinner, Dad came to Magnolia House. I saw his truck through the kitchen window. For a moment, I considered not opening the door. Then I remembered Grandma saying houses were witnesses.
A witness does not hide.
I opened the door. Dad stood on the porch in jeans and a faded polo. He looked smaller without a room full of people behind him. Can I come in? No. He nodded like he deserved that. We sat on the porch steps instead. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, I knew Russell was rushing. I looked at the magnolia tree. I knew we should have checked the title properly, but he said he had it handled. You still signed. I did. Why? His hands folded together. Because I was scared. I almost hated him for choosing the one answer I could understand. The marina business is failing, he said. I kept thinking I could fix it. Then the debt got bigger. Your mom was panicking. Natalie needed money. Russell said the house was sitting there. He said Evelyn was gone and sentiment wouldn't save us. Did you ever think about me? He closed his eyes. That was answer enough. But then he said, not enough. The words landed carefully. Not an apology big enough to cover everything, but the first honest thing he had given me in years. I am sorry, Claire, not for getting caught, for putting you at that table with a pen and calling it family. I wanted to forgive him immediately. That is the embarrassing part nobody tells you. When a parent finally says the words you needed, even late, even imperfect, some younger version of you runs toward them. But I had learned not to hand over trust just because someone arrived with regret. So I said, I believe you're sorry. I don't know if I trust you. He nodded. That's fair. No money, I said. I know. No asking about the trust. I know. No using me to fix the family. He swallowed. I know. We sat quietly.
Then he looked at the porch railing. This needs sanding.
I almost smiled. Grandma said that every spring, I can come Saturday, he said, if you want help. I looked at him. Bring sandpaper, not advice. For the first time that day, he almost laughed. It was not healing. Not yet. But it was a beginning that did not come with a document attached. Natalie never apologized.
She sent one message 3 months later.
Must be nice being Grandma's favorite from beyond the grave.
I did not respond.
Some people think silence is weakness because they have only used noise as power. My mother did not visit. She sent a handwritten note that said, I hope you understand one day what it feels like to have a daughter choose a building over her mother. I put it in the blue folder. Then I wrote one sentence on a sticky note and placed it over the letter. A daughter should not have to choose between truth and love. By fall, I started classes at the College of Charleston. Historic preservation. It felt obvious once I stopped pretending I wanted a life that made my family comfortable. The trust paid tuition from a separate education account Grandma Evelyn had set aside. Not millions, not luxury, just enough. Enough was my grandmother's favorite kind of wealth. Magnolia House remained exactly where it was. Not perfect. Not restored like a magazine cover. Alive. The porch railing got sanded. The kitchen window finally opened without a fight. The upstairs rooms were rented again to 2 retired teachers who paid below market rent because Grandma had promised they could stay as long as they needed. I kept the ledger in the kitchen drawer. I added new entries in my own handwriting. Porch repair, trust filing copies, lemon cake for Grandma's birthday. Dad helped sand railing. Awkward, but useful. That last one made me cry after I wrote it. A year after the graduation dinner, I sat on the porch at sunset with Marjorie's latest trust report in my lap. The magnolia tree was blooming so heavily that the whole yard smelled sweet and impossible. Dad had come by 4 times that spring, always with tools, never with papers. We were not repaired, but he had stopped asking the house to save him. That mattered. Mom still did not speak to me, except through occasional texts that sounded like press releases from a wounded queen. Natalie moved 2 states away for graduate school after finding private loans. She told relatives I stole her future. I let her. If her future depended on selling a dead woman's house without consent, it was not a future I was responsible for protecting.
Uncle Russell lost his real estate license for 18 months and had to repay Harbor Line's deposit in installments.
Lily came to visit once with her mother. She walked through Magnolia House quietly, then asked if Grandma Evelyn was scary. I laughed. No, she was precise. Lily nodded like that made perfect sense. Before she left, I gave her a notebook. Write things down, I told her. Like a diary? Like proof you were here. She smiled. That felt like something Grandma would have approved of. Here is what I learned before I was old enough to rent a car. Family can sit around a table and still be strangers to your heart. People can say they are protecting you while placing a pen in your hand and hoping you do not read. Some relatives will call your boundaries betrayal because they benefited from you having none. And sometimes, the people who love you most protect you with paper because they know one day memory will be put on trial. My grandmother left me a house, but more than that, she left me timing.
She left me instructions. She left me the courage to sit at a table full of people older than me and say, "No, I have read this story, and I know how it ends. I did not destroy my family.
I stopped helping them sell the parts of it that were still honest. That is my story."
One graduation dinner.
One silver pen. One house that was never theirs to sell. And one grandmother who knew that the quietest girl at the table would be the only one brave enough to read before she signed.